Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to service quality class. Let's start the class from here. We stopped here the total quality approach to quality management. We discussed different errors that are happening, um, like the senior management. We discussed about their delegation and poor leadership. We discussed the leadership class, how management and leadership will be different from each other, and how we will, see the differences between leadership versus, management. So a lot of times it takes a lot of leadership when it comes to total quality management, whereas managing is just telling people what to do, uh, okay? To telling people what to do and how to do it, but whereas leadership is just leading by example, getting it done, motivating people, making sure it's done, and making sure what's wrong that the people can't make it, what do they need, and all that. So it's a lot more to leadership rather than management. So poor leadership always will be a failure when it comes to total quality management because it takes a lot of involvement and motivation from the top because you need to empower your staff in order to give them a chance to do what they want to do, right? So without that, you won't be able to. Then team mania, we talked about the team spirit, team ideas, teamwork. We talked about the deployment process, the narrow or dogmatic approach, confusion about differences among education, awareness, inspiration, and skill building. So also a lot with the staff. You need to educate them, train them a lot, teach them how to do and work and get the things done. So when it comes to total quality management, you got to make sure your staff are inspired and motivated, and they are equipped with the right skills to perform. So if they are not able to, how could you expect them to be performing up to the limited or standards that you expect them? So skill building, giving them the skills and education is really, really important. Okay. So the future of total quality management is the demanding global customers. We discussed that like in detail, how nowadays you can't anymore look at your company and say, okay, we are based in this area of the world, in this country, and our competitors are just in the market, and okay, we'll be fine if they're not happy with us or anything. That's gone are those days. It's not possible anymore. What you need to do now is to focus on the global market because your customers are not necessarily next door. They could be somewhere in Texas. They could be somewhere in Europe. They could be anywhere. They might just go online. Like e-commerce is actually becoming the major or the main way of doing business nowadays. Like a lot of companies, they have shut down and stopped doing business like the old way. So now people are just buying online, they're shipping their products and all that. So your customers could be anywhere, and especially when it comes to consulting and all that, a lot of it is done online via video conferencing and everything. So the transportability of businesses is much higher than it was before. So because of that, the demand of global customers has expanded tremendously, and that also has affected their expectation. Now we can't just say, okay, locally the expectation level is this much, so I should be fine. Now your expectations should be matching those internationally accepted. You can't just say because local companies are doing this, I can do it. You've got to see if it's accepted internationally because you are going to satisfy international customers. So the quality of the service, the quality of the products should be matching those expectations. And then opposing economic pressures, like today, the rate of the US dollar would be effect of the Greece problem, the economic problem, or Spain, or if you are in Madrid, in Spain, your spending and power of purchase and power of spending your money depends a lot on the economy of the world now. So economic pressures are actually canceling each other's out or sort of making positive or negative effect on each other. When US is in trouble, Europe gets in trouble. When Asia is in trouble, Europe will get in trouble. And, these are all interrelated. The economies of the world are interrelated. So these pressures will sort of affect each other one way or another. And new approaches to management. We talked about it at Total Quality Management. We said that old, traditional, top-down management is not useful anymore. It's not the common way of management that people will just manage from from the top and tell you what to do and you just follow on. Nowadays you are focusing on the group work, how to involve your employees, and it's basically very much participating, very much like bottom up. Like you want your employees to be really involved and engaged. So the old traditional way of managing is not that much useful anymore. So, and then the relationship between quality and competitiveness. So we talked about it, like the service, the strategic management. We talked about competitiveness and quality. Like quality is your major, focus nowadays because quality is your strategic competitiveness. And then cost of poor quality, we discussed that the poor quality is always costly to you. So if it's you're providing poor quality, a lot of money should be spent on how you rectify and correct those shortcomings and troubles you have with your poor quality. Then the U.S. economy, we talked about U.S. economy and competitiveness. It could be any economy. Competitiveness and economy is actually very much related to each other. How economy works actually gets reflected on the competitiveness of the company. And basically, to be exact, is the competitiveness of the corporations that creates the one country's economy. So in order to have a good economy, you got to have competitive corporations. And factors inhibiting competitiveness. There are a lot of factors that stop competitiveness. A lot of them like paperwork, regulations that don't make any sense, or fair trade. All those stuff that are dealing with doing business and how to make sure that everybody's taken care of are really important when it comes to competitiveness. And comparisons of international competitors, that's also something we just talked about. Internationally, we are competing against each other. And finally, human resources and competitiveness. So the human resource and competitiveness is where you start using your human resource as a competitive advantage. As I mentioned, a lot of big companies, like major companies that are successful, they have great human resource. Look at Google. Google has the best human resource, and the way they are managing them, the way they are choosing their staff, and the way they work together is really important. So the character of the human resource, the character of your staff is really important, and it will reflect into your competitiveness. If you have employees who are self-motivated, if you have employees who are ready to go, who are talented, who are genius, who are really ethical, they care about what they do, they really love what they do, that will reflect on your competitiveness. That reflects on your performance, you know. They don't take their job for granted. They just do it to the perfection. That's what's going to make the difference. Okay? So going back to that competitiveness and globalism, we have world-class organizations. We are talking about, so now there's a question you got to ask yourself is, am I a world-class company? The moment you say, I have this level of quality, if it's acceptable, if you say if it's acceptable, you got to ask yourself this accessibility, of this standard. Is it global or is it local? You know, this is the question you got to ask yourself. And if it's just local, I'm afraid to say that your business is not going to last for long. Management by accounting antithesis of the total quality. So by accounting, management by accounting is managing by numbers, by figures, by results, by profit you make. So there is actually a paradox between total quality and accounting. Definitely, when you have a good quality, when you use total quality management, it will reflect on your numbers. It might take a bit of time. It might not be like immediate, but it will. But the approach should not be from the numbers to quality, but from quality to numbers. I mean, the numbers to quality, what I mean is from the result, from the profit. I mean, the profit will definitely should translate to numbers, good numbers, positive US dollars or whatever dollars or amount of money that is coming into your pocket. That, of course, is the matter. But in order to get there, you need to use this total quality management correctly. And to use it correctly, you got to make sure you have the high quality required. And when it comes to U.S. companies, we have global strengths and weaknesses. We talked about this previous session. I gave you an assignment about the SWOT analysis in the class. Like we still want to be refreshed about that in mind, how to use strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. And basically here, when it comes to the SWOT analysis, we're talking about the global SWOT analysis and the quality management practices in Asian countries. As I said, the TQM comes from Japanese culture, which is the Kaizen, or change is good. Okay, so the relationship between the quality and competitiveness can be summarized as, in a modern global marketplace, quality is the key to competitiveness. So it's easy to say that nowadays. The key to competitiveness is actually quality now. So the cost of poor quality include the following: waste, rejects, rework, customer returns, inspection, recalls, excessive overtime, pricing errors, billing errors, excessive turnovers, premium freight costs, development costs of the failed product, and all that. So basically, the cost of quality, poor quality is all these. We have a lot of waste and rejects. We have retesting. All these retesting is going to take time and money. Rework, you got to rework it. You got to pay money again. Customer returns, when the customer returns stuff. The inspection, the excessive overtime, you got to pay for those overtime. The pricing errors, you got to fix the pricing, because when it's errored and the price is not good, you gotta, fix the price, reduce the price, and that's actually some cost to you, you know. billing errors, excessive turnovers, a lot of customer will just leave you, and then premium freight costs when you got to ship the products to the customers, you got to freight them to them, and then development cost of failed products. Of course, that's also some costs you got to consider. Then field service cost, overdue receivables, handling complaints. We talked about it. You got a lot of complaints when there is dissatisfaction. They express it. You got to fix it. Expediting the process because you have a long line with all these stuff waiting for you, like all these returns, all these problems. You got to fix them, and that will take a lot of time. Then complaints. We discussed about it. System costs. Your system is going to cost you. Planning delays. You got to plan everything ahead. It will take time, and it's going to cause delays. Late paperwork, lack of follow-up, excess inventory. So these all will cause you trouble. Customer allowances. You got to give allowances to customers because of all these unhappy faces you see on their face, and unused capacity. So a lot of capacity of the company is not utilized. So that will cost you because you're paying for those facilities when you're not using it. It's actually a cost. Okay. So the United States came out of rule. We discussed that Japan exam, like how they rebuild their country, and then several factors can inhibit competitiveness, including those related to business and government, family, and education. Okay. When making comparisons about internationally competing countries, the following indicators are usually used: the standard of living, and then trade and export growth, and manufacturing productivity. So basically, we discussed that in economics, the GNP and GDP is standard of living. When a company or a country is doing good, or a company is doing good, it will reflect on its economy, and the country as a whole have a better standard of living. The trade, which will translate into surplus or deficit of the economy. Okay, and the most important key in maximizing competitiveness is the human resource. We talked about it, like how World War II, Germany and Japan, they managed to use their human resource to rebuild their economies. Okay, so strategic management, competitive strategy, core competencies, strategic planning, competitive thinking, SWOT analysis, and the vision. Okay, so developing a mission, we actually did a class assignment on this, on the mission and the guiding principles and the strategic objectives and everything. So to get here to strategies that organizations can adopt for gaining a suitable competitive advantage are cost leadership, differentiation, and market niche strategies. We discussed these grids we discussed in the business strategy class. The same goes here with the service quality. They are still applicable here. And core competencies are things organization does so well, and they can be viewed as providing as competitive advantage. And strategies are approaches adopted for organizations to ensure successful performance in marketplace. So strategies are those approaches that are used and utilized by organizations to ensure their successful performance in the marketplace. Okay, and then planning and execution. So we are actually explaining them in detail. So the strategic management that bases all actions, activities, and decisions is most likely to ensure successful performance in the marketplace. The two major components of strategic management are a strategic planning and a strategic execution. So without planning, there is no execution. So you got to make sure you well plan everything ahead of time, and then you're able to execute it. So the planning is a major important part when it comes to strategic management. Part of the strategic planning is thinking creatively. Uh, so you eliminate those parts that are sacred cows, which are cows. Sorry, sacred cows that are those parts that are not you're not allowed to touch or question. You got to be able to question everything there, and you got to be able to replan and rework it and eliminate anything that is not the best thing to be there. So strategic planning is a process whereby organizations develop their vision, mission, and guiding principles or values. So we discussed that in detail in the strategic management course. So we want to make sure that you still remember those, because when it comes to service quality management, total quality management, you're still required to do that, and organization's vision, because the quality management should be in line with your vision, mission, and principles and values. If the company's values or corporate culture is not celebrating quality and total quality management, you won't be able to make it happen. It's very, very much related. An organization's mission describes who an organization is and what it does and where it's going to go. So the mission is what you actually, where you are right now, what you do right now. And the guiding principles is a framework that you will pursue, So like the guiding principles, these are like those values or, behaviors that will get you where you want to go. Okay? An organization's broad strategic objective translates its mission into more specific terms that represent actual targets at which the organization aims. And the objectives are more specific than the mission, but they are still broad. So a successful organization is the one who is able to materialize their mission. Their mission is something that becomes tangible. If you have a mission that is not possible, it's not doable, it's not practicable, how would you be able to get there? You got to make sure you are able to achieve your mission. You can't just say, okay, I want to get there and then do nothing. You got to be able to work your mission. You got to be able to make the staff of the company realize what exactly you mean by your mission. They should feel it, they should sense it, they should live that mission with you. It should be translated in everyday behavior of your staff. Otherwise, it's not going to be able. You're not going to be able to use it, and it's useless. It's just something you write and you can just frame it on a wall. So tactics are well defined. Finite projects and activities are undertaken for the purpose of a specific desired outcomes in support of the broad objectives. So we use tactics. You remember that we are actually borrowing a strategic management and all these terms of strategic management from war. So war, like back in the old time when the empires were fighting against each other, they used tactics. So tactics are still very useful when it comes to strategies. Finite projects and activities undertaken for the purpose of a specific desired outcomes in support of the broad objectives. So use minor little tactics to enhance and undertake big projects. So big projects, they won't be able to be manageable unless they're broken down into small chunk sizes, manageable chunk sizes. And those chunk sizes will be taken care of by tactics that you are defining them pretty well. And by defining those tactics, you're giving the procedures for your staff to be able to work them. And those should be in line with your broad objective, of course. Finally, so the best strategic plan will serve no purpose unless it's effectively executed. Okay, it's great to have a plan. It's great to have a well thought in plan, but unless it's executed, it's worth nothing. So to promote successful execution of strategies, organizations should undertake the following activities. First, they should communicate. Unless you communicate all along within your organization, you won't be able to, execute your plan. Then build capabilities. You gotta build up some capabilities for your company that you are able to do something. Then establish strategy supportive stimuli. So establish some support strategy, and then eliminate administrative barriers. We discussed when it comes to soil quality management, the administrative or paperwork and red tape barriers are the kill for total quality management. You won't be able to do total quality management unless you remove these barriers. Then identify the advocates and resistors. Those who want to resist change. We discussed that total quality management is actually accompanied with change, constant change. So those who are resisting change are not helping any good. So exercise the strategic leadership and monitor and adjust as needed. So you gotta exercise strategic leadership. We discussed about leadership, how it's important, how it's executed. But the strategic leadership is the leadership that has your strategic plan in mind, is actually executing and help and motivate execution of your strategic plans. And finally, monitoring and adjusting when it's needed. So as he said, the constant change is a dominant concept. So you got to keep that in mind as well. Okay, so let's pause here. Are there any questions or comments? Is everybody following me? Any questions or comments so far from before today? Okay, very good. So now I want to show you a video clip. It's a speech. I'm not sure if you guys know about TED. TED is Technology, Entertainment, and Design. It's actually a yearly conference which is held in California. Their participants are coming from all over the world. They come present their innovative ideas on leadership, on strategy, on like their achievements in their companies or their findings, their researches, everything. Like Steve Jobs or whoever was successful will come and talk, and it's really, really educating. So there is one speech I want to show you guys. Is from Barry Schwartz. He's a professor. He's a professor in different universities here in California, and he also teaches in East Coast, some schools over there. And his speech is very, very relevant to total quality management when we look at it in the perspective of wisdom, because a lot of what we talk about total quality management, and it should make sense. It should be about wise organizations, wisdom, the common sense. Okay, so I want to show you this speech actually. It's for like a few years back, but it's very, very well thought of speech, and it's very, very popular speech. Like it's got a lot of reviews and everything. So I want to show you that, and then we'll discuss about it, and then we'll go from there. So before that, is there any questions for me? Okay, good.
In his inaugural address, Barack Obama appealed to each of us to give our best as we try to extricate ourselves from this current financial crisis. But what did he appeal to? He did not, happily, follow in the footsteps of his predecessor and tell us to just go shopping. Nor did he tell us, trust us, trust your country, invest, invest, invest. Instead, what he told us was to put aside childish things, and he appealed to virtue. Virtue is an old-fashioned word. It seems a little out of place in a cutting-edge environment like this one. And besides, some of you might be wondering, what the hell does it mean? Let me begin with an example. This is the job description of a hospital janitor that is scrolling up on the screen. And all of the items on it are unremarkable. They're the things you would expect: mop the floors, sweep them, empty the trash, restock the cabinets. It may be a little surprising how many things there are, but it's not surprising what they are. But the one thing I want you to notice about them is this. Even though this is a very long list, there isn't a single thing on it that involves other human beings. Not one. The janitor's job could just as well be done in a mortuary as in a hospital. And yet, when some psychologists interviewed hospital janitors to get a sense of what they thought their jobs were like, they encountered Mike, who told them about how he stopped mopping the floor because Mr. Jones was out of his bed, getting a little exercise, trying to build up his strength, walking slowly up and down the hall. And Charlene told them about how she ignored her supervisor's admonition and didn't vacuum the visitors' lounge because there were some family members who were there all day, every day, who at this moment happened to be taking a nap. And then there was Luke, who washed the floor in a comatose young man's room twice, because the man's father, who had been keeping a vigil for 6 months, didn't see Luke do it the first time, and his father was angry. And behavior like this from janitors, from technicians, from nurses, and if we're lucky every now and then, from doctors, doesn't just make people feel a little better. It actually improves the quality of patient care and enables hospitals to run well. Now, not all janitors are like this, of course, but the ones who are think that these sorts of human interactions involving kindness, care, and empathy are an essential part of the job, and yet their job description contains not one word about other human beings. These janitors have the moral will to do right by other people, and beyond this, they have the moral skill to figure out what doing right means. Practical wisdom, Aristotle told us, is the combination of moral will and moral skill. A wise person knows when and how to make the exception to every rule, as the janitors knew when to ignore their job duties in the service of other objectives. A wise person knows how to improvise, as Luke did when he rewashed the floor. Real-world problems are often ambiguous and ill-defined, and the context is always changing. A wise person is like a jazz musician, using the notes on the page, but dancing around them, inventing combinations that are appropriate for the situation and the people at hand. A wise person knows how to use these moral skills in the service of the right aims, to serve other people, not to manipulate other people. And finally, perhaps most important, a wise person is made, not born. Wisdom depends on experience, and not just any experience. You need the time to get to know the people that you're serving. You need permission to be allowed to improvise, to try new things, occasionally to fail, and to learn from your failures. And you need to be mentored by wise teachers. When you ask the janitors who behave like the ones I described how hard it is to learn to do their jobs, they tell you that it takes lots of experience. And they don't mean it takes lots of experience to learn how to mop floors and empty trash cans. It takes lots of experience to learn how to care for people. At TED, brilliance is rampant. It's scary. The good news is that you don't need to be brilliant to be wise. The bad news is that without wisdom, brilliance isn't enough. It's as likely to get you into trouble and other people into trouble as anything else. Now, I hope that we all know this. There's a sense in which it's obvious, and yet, let me tell you a little story. It's a story about lemonade. A dad and his 11-year-old son were watching a Detroit Tigers game at the ballpark. His son asked him for some lemonade, and Dad went to the concession stand to buy it. All they had was Mike's Hard Lemonade, which was 5% alcohol. Dad, being an academic, had no idea that Mike's Hard Lemonade contained alcohol, so he brought it back. And the kid was drinking it, and a security guard spotted it and called the police, who called an ambulance. They rushed to the ballpark, whisked the kid to the hospital. The emergency room ascertained that the kid had no alcohol in his blood, and they were ready to let the kid go, but not so fast. The Wayne County Child Welfare Protective Agency said no, and the child was sent to a foster home for 3 days. At that point, can the child go home? Well, a judge said yes, but only if the dad leaves the house and checks into a motel. After 2 weeks, I'm happy to report the family was reunited, but the welfare workers and the ambulance people and the judge all said the same thing. We hate to do it, but we have to follow procedure. How do things like this happen? Scott Simon, who told this story on NPR, said, rules and procedures may be dumb, but they spare you from thinking. And to be fair, rules are often imposed because previous officials have been lax and they let a child go back to an abusive household. Fair enough. When things go wrong, as of course they do, we reach for two tools to try to fix them. One tool we reach for is rules. Better ones, more of them. The second tool we reach for is incentives. Better ones, more of them. What else, after all, is there? We can certainly see this in response to the current financial crisis. Regulate, 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 fix the incentives, fix the incentives, fix the incentives. The truth is that neither rules nor incentives are enough to do the job. How could you even write a rule that got the janitors to do what they did? And would you pay them a bonus for being empathic? It's preposterous on its face. And what happens is that as we turn increasingly to rules and incentives may make things better in the short run, but they create a downward spiral that makes them worse in the long run. Moral skill is chipped away by an over-reliance on rules that deprives us of the opportunity to improvise and learn from our improvisations. And moral will is undermined by an incessant appeal to incentives that destroy our desire to do the right thing. And without intending it, by appealing to rules and incentives, we are engaging in a war on wisdom. Let me just give you a few examples. First, of rules and the war on moral skill. The lemonade story is one. Second, no doubt more familiar to you, is the nature of modern American education. Scripted, lockstep curricula. Here's an example from Chicago kindergarten. Reading and enjoying literature and words that begin with B, the bath. Assemble students on a rug. Give students a warning about the dangers of hot water. Say 75 items in this script to teach a 25-page picture book all over Chicago in every kindergarten class in the city. Every teacher is saying the same words in the same way on the same day. We know why these scripts are there. We don't trust the judgment of teachers enough to let them loose on their own. Scripts like these are insurance policies against disaster. And they prevent disaster. But what they assure in its place is mediocrity. Don't get me wrong, we need rules. Jazz musicians need some notes. Most of them need some notes on the page. We need more rules for the bankers, God knows. But too many rules prevent accomplished jazz musicians from improvising, and as a result, they lose their gifts, or worse, they stop playing altogether. Now, how about incentives? They seem cleverer. If you have one reason for doing something, and I give you a second reason for doing the same thing, it seems only logical that two reasons are better than one, and you're more likely to do it. Right? Well, not always. Sometimes two reasons to do the same thing seem to compete with one another instead of complementing, and they make people less likely to do it. I'll just give you one example because time is racing. In Switzerland, back in about 15 years ago, they were trying to decide where to site nuclear waste dumps. There was going to be a national referendum, and some psychologists went around and polled citizens who were very well informed. And they said, would you be willing to have a nuclear waste dump in your community? Astonishingly, 50% of the citizens said yes. They knew it or thought it was dangerous. They thought it would reduce their property values, but it had to go somewhere, and they had responsibilities as citizens. The psychologists asked other people a slightly different question. They said, if we paid you 6 weeks' salary every year, would you be willing to have a nuclear waste dump in your community? Two reasons. It's my responsibility, and I'm getting paid. Instead of 50% saying yes, 25% said yes. What happens is that the introduction of the incentive gets us so that instead of asking, what is my responsibility? All we ask is, what serves my interests? When incentives don't work, when CEOs ignore the long-term health of their companies in pursuit of short-term gains that will lead to massive bonuses, the response is always the same. Get smarter incentives. The truth is that there are no incentives you can devise that are ever going to be smart enough. Any incentive system can be subverted by bad will. We need incentives. People have to make a living. But excessive reliance on incentives demoralizes professional activity in two senses of that word. It causes people who engage in that activity to lose morale, and it causes the activity itself to lose morality. Barack Obama said before he was inaugurated, we must ask not just is it profitable, but is it right? And when professions are demoralized, everyone in them becomes dependent on, addicted to incentives, and they stop asking, is it right? We see this in medicine. And we certainly see it in the world of business. It is obvious that this is not the way people want to do their work. So what can we do? A few sources of hope. We ought to try to remoralize work. One way not to do it: teach more ethics courses. There is no better way to show people that you're not serious than to tie up everything you have to say about ethics into a little package with a bow and consign it to the margins as an ethics course. What to do instead? One, celebrate moral exemplars. Acknowledge when you go to law school that a little voice is whispering in your ear about Atticus Finch. No 10-year-old goes to law school to do mergers and acquisitions. People are inspired by moral heroes, but we learn that with sophistication comes the understanding that you can't acknowledge that you have moral heroes. Well, acknowledge them, be proud that you have them, celebrate them, and demand that the people who teach you acknowledge and celebrate them too. That's one thing we can do. I don't know how many of you remember this. Another moral hero, 15 years ago, Aaron Forderstein, who was the head of Malden Mills in Massachusetts. They made Polartec. The factory burned down. 3,000 employees. He kept every one of them on the payroll. Why? Because it would have been a disaster for them and for the community if he had let them go. Maybe on paper our company's worth less to Wall Street, but I can tell you it's worth more. We're doing fine. Just at this TED, we heard talks from several moral heroes, two particularly inspiring to me. One was Ray Anderson, who turned a part of the evil empire into a zero footprint or almost a zero footprint business. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. And a bonus he's discovering is he's actually going to make even more money. His employees are inspired by the effort. Why? Because they're happy to be doing something that's the right thing to do. Yesterday we heard Willie Smith talk about reforesting in Indonesia. And in many ways this is the perfect example because it took the will to do the right thing. And God knows it took a huge amount of technical skill. I'm boggled at how much he needed to know in order, and his associates, in order to plot this out. But most important to make it work, and he emphasized this, is that it took knowing the people in the communities. Unless the people you're working with are behind you, this will fail. And there isn't a formula to tell you how to get the people behind you because different people in different communities organize their lives in different ways. So there's a lot here at TED and at other places to celebrate, and you don't have to be a mega hero. There are ordinary heroes like the janitors who are worth celebrating too. As practitioners, each and every one of us should strive to be ordinary, if not extraordinary heroes. As heads of organizations, we should strive to create environments that encourage and nurture both moral skill and moral will. Even the wisest and most well-meaning people will give up if they have to swim against the current in the organizations in which they work. If you run an organization, you should be sure that none of the jobs have job descriptions like the job description of the janitors. Because the truth is that any work you do that involves interaction with other people is moral work. And any moral work depends upon practical wisdom. And perhaps most important, as teachers, we should strive to be the ordinary heroes, the moral exemplars to the people we mentor. And there are a few things that we have to remember as teachers. One is that we are always teaching. Someone is always watching. The camera is always on. Bill Gates talked about the importance of education, and in particular the model that Kip was providing. Knowledge is power, and he talked about a lot of the wonderful things that Kip is doing to take inner city kids and turn them in the direction of college. I want to focus on one particular thing Kip is doing that Bill didn't mention, and that is they have come to the realization that the single most important thing kids need to learn is character. They need to learn to respect themselves. They need to learn to respect their schoolmates. They need to learn to respect their teachers. And most important, they need to learn to respect learning. That's the principal objective. If you do that, the rest is just pretty much a coast downhill. And the teachers, the way you teach these things to kids is by having the teachers and all the other staff embody it every minute of every day. Obama appealed to virtue, and I think he was right. And the virtue that we need above all others, I think, is practical wisdom, because it's what allows other virtues, honesty, kindness, courage, and so on, to be displayed at the right time and in the right way. He also appealed to hope. Right again. I think there is reason for hope. I think people want to be allowed to be virtuous. In many ways, it's what TED is all about, wanting to do the right thing in the right way for the right reasons. This kind of wisdom is within the grasp of each and every one of us if only we start paying attention to what we do, to how we do it, and perhaps most importantly, to the structure of the organizations within which we work, so as to make sure that it enables us and other people to develop wisdom rather than having it suppressed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So, what do you guys think? You saw the speech by Barry Schwartz. So, what do you think? First, I want to get your comments on what you heard and saw. So, how do you relate to what we've been discussing? What he said, the wisdom. What is the relationship that you see, and how do you relate it on your inputs? Yeah, absolutely, I will do that, but I want to get your understanding first before I summarize it. I want you to tell me what did you get from what he said. What was the most important thing that stood out to you while you were watching it? If you remember just a sentence from what he said, what it is, would it be? Anybody? Are you gonna participate in the discussion? I want discussion from everyone, please. It was very much related to what we have been discussing in the past few sessions. So I thought it's a great way of just reinforcing what we have talked about. So I really appreciate if you guys participate. I want your comments. Can you guys hear me? Does everybody hear me? Okay, so please participate. So the question is, what has stood out to you? You were able to watch it, right? You were viewing with me, right? You could hear it clear. I don't know why nobody's participating. Maybe I should just call your names. Mr. Sophie, so what do you think? Yeah, that's a good start. Yes, it was about the specific job that employees do, okay, their job description and the human resource, the quality of human resource. That's a good start, Mr. Akmal. So let's just start from Mr. Abdul Munir Safi. So what do you think? Please write down your comments, sir. Mr. Safi, can you hear me? Okay, good. It was about an employee's decision, very good, as well as employee's competency, very good, yes. Competency and wisdom. Wisdom was the key word. It was under wisdom, right, Asuda, very good. Yeah, wisdom was absolutely the key word. What else? Mr. Nazari, Mr. Abdul Samad Nazari, do you want to participate in the discussion also?
I think yes. He was talking more about rules and regulation, also incentives, and they say that we have to be smart enough to do things and to do it correctly and on the right way. We have to have a module, and we have, if your wisdom, we have to pay attention what we do and why we do and how to do things.
Okay.
Yeah, more about rule and regulation. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, awesome. So, what was the most important thing to you? What did you think was the most important thing among what he said? What stood out to you the most among the stuff that he mentioned?
It's we have to, when we do something, we have to follow the rule and regulation, and we have to be incentive, and we have to have reason for doing things, and we have to have models for doing things, and then we have to pay attention. We have to wisdom, pay attention what to do and why we do and how to do things. So these are all about yeah, these kind of things.
Very good. Very good. Okay. And Mrs. Aziza, how about you? What is your ideas? Okay, so yeah, actually there was focusing on role and planning as well. Very good. Yes. Employees was considered actually was focusing on roles and planning. Explain the wisdom was not born but made. Yes, very good. Yes, great point. Absolutely. Mrs. Aziza and Mr. Elias. Elias, you used to be very participative in previous semesters. I haven't heard from you for a long time. What happened? You want to tell us what you think? Yasi, do you want to give us your thoughts on what he said? share with us your thoughts, Elias? Okay. Okay. So basically, what he was talking about, he was talking about the wisdom in the organizations and the role that wisdom plays in organizations. We have been talking about total quality management, how to involve the staff. He was talking about like he provided certain examples like the janitors examples that their job is pretty basic. What they do is just mopping the floor, sweeping the floor, very basic stuff they do, right? So it's pretty basic. If they do it right, it's they're like normal janitors. But he said those who are distinguished by the customers are not those that just did what they were supposed to do, right? Uh, he mentioned that those who went above and beyond, who used their wisdom, were those who basically stood out. So that was his example. And the other one was about that dad who was trying to buy some drink for his son. And he was saying that when we only relying on rules and regulations and losing our wisdom, we will not be performing as we should. So going back to total quality management, the concept of constantly changing is actually embracing this idea that you have to change, you have to adopt and adjust whenever it's required and needed in order to adjust to what you should do. And on the other side, on the quality of work, he said the best quality of service were coming from those janitors. And sometimes they had to stop sweeping the floor because the patient was needed to rest that's in an hour. Or one of them did it twice because she wanted to show that patient that she is sweeping the floor. And she just doesn't want to say like I did it once. You know, so it's like even exceeding the required standards from you. She did it like something that she was not supposed to. She was not required to. As for her job, nobody would say why you didn't sweep the floor twice. She did it out of courtesy. So that's the concept we want to internalize when it comes to total quality management as well. So the service is supposed to be making sense. It's about common sense. It's about wisdom. So we saw how he was focusing on education, how he was focusing on just giving the students in the schools a regular education, like a standard education, will stop catastrophe, but will not bring in excellence. So excellence will come in when we are going above and beyond. So our goal in service quality management course is to promote the idea of constant change and improvement towards betterment. So we are not just going to stick to the standards that we achieve at a certain level, but we are always trying to adapt to a better scenario. So basically, he highlighted a lot of factors like wisdom, like morality and ethics. All these will actually be very, very important when it comes to the service that we provide to the customers. So learning was involved and enhancing the learning. And then he talked about incentives. He said when there's something moral and it's morally done, we should absolutely celebrate it. But sometimes when we give double incentives instead of promoting something, we actually demoting, because people think that in order to do that they really need incentives, whereas their moral should be the one which actually encourages them or motivates them to do it. So the corporate culture here would be a good standpoint regarding the morality. Like a corporate culture in a corporation could be a good landmark, which could cause the employees and the staff to perform and do something that will reflect onto their performance. And I just want to show you a chart which is about total quality management, and it's very, very interesting. Okay. So okay. So this is done by British Petroleum, BP, BP Group. It's a very interesting chart they have. As you can see on the left-hand side, they have their benefits, and then they have the timeline on the bottom. So they start with total quality management, so with the service. So they start the process of total quality management back in 70s. Then they started business process improvement. When we do total quality management, of course, we start to realize what is the area, or what are the areas that we could improve. You cannot see the chart? Can everybody see the chart? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's on the main page. Okay. So basically, so you start with total quality management. You find out what are the areas that you could improve. Then you go on with the business process improvement. So all the processes that are loopy or like problem, you try to fix them, right? Then they use Six Sigma, which we covered a bit, and we will discuss more about it, what it is exactly and how we utilize it. And that also helps them to do learn-based approaches. So learn-based approaches, which is based on learning. You always try to learn like ways to improve and then implement them in your business. So then again, we have a business process improvement after Six Sigma, and finally we have customer expectation management. So the final era is to how to manage the expectation of the customers. That includes to set their expectation to a certain level, to meet their expectations, to go above and beyond their expectations. So that all needs certain management. So as you can see in the chart, all through the years, they have been this is the continuation of total quality management, but in different eras they have, in order to get to the learn-based approaches, they have used different methods like Six Sigma or customer expectation management. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Yeah, because so Mr. Barak, when you can't hear me, it's probably your speaker or something, because everybody's hearing me loud and clear. There is a specific definition. Yes, of course, there is a specific definition for each and every part. So total quality management is actually like the whole chart is actually showing you the business process evolution. So the whole business process evolution is due to total quality management approach. But we are putting it in steps so that people will be able to differentiate between methods used, right? So total quality management was the beginning, was the foundation of all these. Like the Jurons, like the Deming, all those ideas were founded back in 70s, right? So, and 80s. And then later on, we have how we apply those ideas into real practice. And then Six Sigma approach, we have already discussed it a bit, and we will cover more of it. But it's also a business improvement technique that is utilized. And then finally, learn-based approaches and business process management and customer expectation management as the final step. Okay, any questions so far? Yeah, Six Sigma, we talked about it in the first few sessions. If you remember, yeah, Six Sigma was a disciplined, data-driven approach, which is the methodology for eliminating defects. So continuously we are using those techniques to eliminate defects. So we do defects, we try to find out what are the defects and then try to remove them. We actually discussed that before. We discussed all these different, I mean, not in details, but minor. What is the difference between the process improvement, process management? Okay, so here, process improvement, if you remember when we talked about total quality management, we said we find out what are the processes that are not the way they're supposed to, or there's a loop, or there's a problem or flaw in the system. So we try to remove that defectful process and step and change it with something better. So that's improvement of the process. So you take those steps that are flawful and then change it with something correct. And then the business process management is when you are managing all these processes. Means that they are not necessarily flawful or they have any mistakes, but you have to manage them in order for the system as a whole to work properly. So that is the answer to your question. Let's talk about. Any more questions or comments about what Barry Schwartz said? Do you guys have any questions? Do you understand it fully? Was it clear for you? Okay, so then now is the time for your task then. So please tell us what was the most important point mentioned by very words think is the most applicable to your mention. Okay, so please tell us what was the most important point mentioned by Barry Schwartz that you think it is the most applicable to you, and mention why. So tell us what was the most important factor he mentioned. What was the concept that stood out to you, and why? And tell us how it's applicable to you and why. So that is the task for today. So I'll give you 5 minutes to think about it, then we will discuss it in the class. I want your personal experience, like your answer, not just the general theoretic answer, but I want some answer that is like applicable to your career, to your jobs, to your corporations, companies, NGOs, or wherever you work. So please give me a good answer which is related to your work, not just the theoretical answer. Okay. Any questions about the task? Okay. So your 5 minutes just starts from now. Just take your time, and then we'll discuss. Okay, so let's see what you have here. Okay, from Mr. Akmal, the most important point was mentioned by Rachel was about using the wisdom for any execution. For example, after successful reporting, it is for wisdom was rule for better agency, which is wisdom from patience, morality, and attitude and people. Very good example, very good understanding of the case, Mr. Akmal. Thank you. And Mr. Bari, I think all the points mentioned were very important to have successful business culture. Need to relate with each other. Okay. The most important to me was take decision, having a specific plan in order to better responsibility, which we are responsible. Okay. Yeah, better responsibility. Very good. Yes. How about others? Mrs. Masuda, do you want to share with us your thoughts? Elias, how about you? Mr. Nazari, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yes, it was talking about wisdom and what role it plays in the organization. Then we have total quality management. We say we have to change and adjust ourselves to the situation, environment, or society in order to be successful and to be able to perform our jobs. And we have there is a proverb, we say change or die. And then by providing better education, learning and enhance learning, give incentives and celebrate the incentives. The other things, corporate cultures make the employee to perform well and to do their job better. So these kinds of things there.
Very good. Thank you. That's great. And you
You are welcome.
apply all these points in our career and our industries.
I think all these things can be applicable to any organization, any agency or projects, especially when we are in a position when we make a decision or when we lead people or manage people. So all these things are very essential and useful things that we have to, everyone should consider in order to be successful in their organization and to be able to achieve the organization goal and objectives.
Very true. That's true. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Okay. So how about others, Mr. Elias and Mrs. Masuda? Do you want to share your answers also to the question? waiting for the last two parents to answer and finish the session. Can you guys hear me, Mr. Masuda, Mr. Kiyasi and Mrs. Masuda? Okay, for some reason they are not responding, maybe they're disconnected. So just to wrap up, so today we showed very short speech on wisdom and how it actually applies to total quality management. We discussed that. Then we also looked into strategic management and its applicability in total quality management and how we can use the SWOT analysis and everything. We discussed this chart, the business process evolution within the years for the BP group. And so we tried to give you some applicable examples, and we also tried to show you this movie, this speech on TED, which was very interesting, and I thought you would like it. So don't forget to email me your assignments, your answers tomorrow. And if there's no question, we can finish the session now. Are there any comments or questions? Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. And you have a wonderful evening and beautiful week ahead of you. Oh, I got Ms. Masuda's answer. The most important point you mentioned was the rule of wisdom, and the employee plays in organization, social value of work, necessary of practical wisdom, and morality. That is exactly. Okay, no problem, Mr. Barak. You can always refer to the recorded sessions, and we'll see after that. I can. Oh, okay, no problem, Ms. Masuda. Okay, thank you, thanks everyone, and so I'll see you guys next week. Have a nice week and beautiful evening.